All right, everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about how Bitcoin is going to get to 250K. And there's one catalyst that came out today that's going to send it there pretty quickly, in my opinion. So let's get started. Disclaimer, this is not financial advice, of course. You guys all know that. But this is the big news for today. This would send Bitcoin flying. So President Trump signed an executive order today that aims to allow Bitcoin and crypto in 401ks. This was really interesting because there is approximately $12.5 trillion in 401ks in the United States. So this is a really good piece from Joe Consorti, really good follow on X. Um, $8.7 trillion market, he says. The total retirement assets are 43.4 trillion. Yet another pool of trapping of capital. So yesterday we talked about how the Bitcoin will swallow up the real estate market. Today we're talking about how it could swallow up a lot of the 401k market. But this is where I got that $12.5 trillion number. Shout out to James from Invest Answers. We are talking about a 1 to 5% allocation to Bitcoin could look something like this. So $12.5 trillion dollars, if you take 1% of that, that's $125 billion dollars. That would bring Bitcoin to approximately 292,000, right? So that's just 1%. We do have some people saying, Bitcoin allocation should be like, for example, with BlackRock, it's like 2 to 5%. And then you have some people saying Bitcoin allocation should be up to like 40% if you're a really aggressive trader or a really aggressive allocation. So, I mean, 1% is like the bare minimum, and in my opinion, I think it should be a lot more than that. I think 5% should be the bare minimum, just because Bitcoin is one of the best performing assets of all time. Obviously, a lot of you guys know that, but with something like this being a huge catalyst, I mean, it'll just be a massive inflow of capital. And this is that last table. We put it into a chart. So once again, this is from Invest Answers. Shout out to James. And you can see here, the higher the allocation, obviously, the higher the Bitcoin's price goes. But we're talking about huge, huge numbers. So that's why this is such an important topic today, is because we know President Trump is very pro crypto, and if we start putting 401k allocation into Bitcoin, yeah, we're going pretty high. So Mike Novogratz agrees. He went on CNBC to talk about this. He says if Trump opens a 401k plan to crypto, there's going to be massive BTC inflows. Now, he didn't really give an exact number. We just know it's going to be quite a lot. And Trump, obviously, being pro crypto, seems like he's starting to get it. He said in the past, never sell your Bitcoin. For too long, our government has violated the cardinal rule that every Bitcoiner knows to never sell. Um, I'm not too convinced that Trump actually understands Bitcoin fully. However, I'm very confident his pretty much entire cabinet does. So that's really good news. Like David Sachs, JD Vance, we talked about yesterday, Howard Lutnick, all these people, they are very bullish on Bitcoin. I don't think Trump necessarily himself is, but once again, his cabinet basically tells him what to do a lot of the times, especially in the crypto space. So that's really good as well. And then, of course, you have the Queen herself, Cynthia Lummis. As we know, she's very bullish on Bitcoin. She's been trying to pass this bill to buy a million Bitcoin, which would give 5% of the Bitcoin supply under the control of the United States. I think this is really important. It's being overlooked in many cases because, if you're talking about Bitcoin being, the digital gold, USA has a digital, I'm sorry, USA has a gold stockpile. They definitely need to have a digital gold stockpile as well. And there are other countries that are stacking Bitcoin right now. So we need to get on this right away. So obviously I support this. And this one was a really interesting perspective from Marty Party. He says the easiest way for the US government to get their hands on 1 million Bitcoin is to buy MicroStrategy. Now, the reason why I think this is important is because number one, I think this is a very good point, and I think there's some truth to it because you look at MicroStrategy, they have this system where they buy Bitcoin by selling shares, selling preferred stock. So essentially, if you buy one MicroStrategy, the Bitcoin per share over time will go up, right? So if you buy, if we put $115,000 into Bitcoin, you have one Bitcoin, or you could put $115,000 in a MicroStrategy. Over time, you'll have more than $115,000 worth of Bitcoin because MicroStrategy continues to buy Bitcoin, right? So the Bitcoin per share goes up. So it's a good point. It's really interesting. And the second point I want to make is Howard Lutnick, which is he's the Treasury Secretary, or actually no, that's Scott Bessent. But Howard Lutnick, he's a huge he's one of the right hand men of Donald Trump on the administration, and he's one of his biggest holdings, if not his biggest holding, is MicroStrategy. So he definitely knows this. Obviously, Howard Lutnick is, he's like his hedge fund is huge, multi-billion-dollar hedge fund. So they must know something, right? I mean, if they're not buying Bitcoin, they're buying MicroStrategy. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing. So really good point from Marty Party. And then, I mean, just to put it simply, there's not that much Bitcoin to go around. From Cointelegraph, you can see the Bitcoin supply is at 15.63 million Bitcoin, which basically means long-term holders aren't selling. Um, the less long-term holders that sell, the less Bitcoin is available. Obviously, that means the price is going to go a lot higher because the long-term holders, they know the price is going to go much higher than 115, 16,000. I mean, if they've been in it for this long, they're probably not going to be selling anytime soon. And then, of course, if you look at the July ETFs, crypto ETFs far, far took in way more inflows than any other ETF that's out there. So it's very impressive. It's very good to see. It's obviously very bullish as well. And then, of course, retail are starting to get it too. You can see 120,000 Bitcoin were bought around the $112,000 low, and now we're back up to 116,000. So retail is not scared. They've seen this before, and it's retail is starting to get a lot smarter. But I would argue that retail is not here to its fullest extent. I think there's a lot more retail money that has yet to come into the space. So ETF insanity, you guys know ETFs have been buying a crap ton of Bitcoin. You can see here this chart from Bitwise clearly states it's really, really profound how much Bitcoin has been bought from these ETFs compared to the amount of Bitcoin that's been mined, right? So 97,000 Bitcoin mined year to date, and the uh, the amount that's been purchased is over 540,000. So that's a lot of Bitcoin, not a lot of Bitcoin that's mined. Way too much demand for supply is the easy way to look at this. Now, more ETF madness. This is a really good point from Quentin. And this is also a point made from Matt Haugen many times at Bitwise because he used to look, well, that's where he started is ETFs, right? So he was talking about how the gold ETF, when it first started, it brought in, I think, like $4 billion. The second year, it brought in double that. And then the third year, it brought in even more than that. Fourth year brought even more than that. So we're kind of starting to see this now. That's what Quentin is saying. Gold ran for 8 straight years post ETF. Bitcoin now is a structured bid from the ETFs. Do you think the 4 year cycle really matters? I'm not completely convinced personally that the 4 year cycle is over. But, when you throw the ETFs into the equation, maybe we won't have another prolonged bear market or like another huge crash because of the amount of money that the ETFs are bringing into the space. So really interesting to think about. And then once again, from Invest Answers, you can see the balance from miners is dropping pretty steadily, pretty rapidly. So obviously, miners, they bring the Bitcoin, and that's where a lot of the big whales they get their Bitcoin from, is directly from the miners. Obviously, miners are trying to hold Bitcoin as well. So, the more Bitcoin they don't sell, that means the less Bitcoin there is available for the big whales. And once we see that number dwindle to really low amounts, then that's when we see the price start to take off, which we're kind of seeing a little bit right now. So, Brian Armstrong, CEO of Coinbase, he says that crypto is pretty close to the Netflix moment. So obviously, you guys, maybe some of you aren't old enough to remember Blockbuster, but Netflix came along and basically just took their entire market share. So I think what he's comparing this to is like traditional finance, banks, maybe just fiat currency in general. I think Bitcoin is here to overtake all of that. And once we do see that Netflix moment, obviously we're going to see a huge, huge influx in inflows into Bitcoin, more than we already are seeing, which is just incredible to think about. So, best performing asset of all time. As you guys have probably seen this chart before. Sorry if it's a little bit cut off. But for the last, what is this, 14, 12, 13 years, Bitcoin has been the best performing asset out of 9 of them. So It's not it's not a coincidence, right? If it happens once or twice, it's like, oh yeah, maybe it was just a good year, but no, it's happened 9 times in the last 11 years. Okay, my bad, 11 years. But still, 9 out of 11 is pretty darn good, especially when you look at the amount that Bitcoin is appreciating. You can see it has been the worst performing asset in 3 of those 11 years, but the gains far outweigh the downturns every 4 years when there's a bear market. Now, you can also see here Bitcoin. This is basically another chart saying how Bitcoin has been the best performing asset every single year, pretty much. Even though gold is up 42% in the last year, Bitcoin's done a lot better, and especially it's done a lot better than the S&P 500. We talked about that yesterday. S&P 500 doesn't really give you great returns, and it actually doesn't really outperform inflation either. So you have to invest your money somewhere. It might as well be in the best performing asset of all time. Now, rate cuts should help the price of Bitcoin and basically all markets altogether. We talked yesterday how I think Jerome Powell is really stupid. I'm sure a lot of you agree with me there, but there's a 92% chance he's going to cut rates. There's also a very small chance that he'll cut more than a 25 basis point cut. I mean, we'll take a 50-point cut at this point. Like, there is argument that it would make the market look bad if he cuts 50 basis points instead of 25. I personally don't care. I mean, I think the cut is long overdue. So Jerome, just get it over with. Cut it 50 basis points. I think that'll be great for the markets. Obviously, it would pump my bag. So who doesn't want that, right? But moving on, we talking about rate cuts. Well, one of the big reasons why Jerome Powell hasn't cut is because he is concerned about tariffs. Well, despite the tariffs, 82% of S&P 500 companies have beat quarterly earnings. So what the hell is Jerome Powell gonna back his argument up with now? I honestly have no idea. And you can see here the top 10 stocks in the S&P 500, they basically take up 75% of the top 500 market cap, right? So basically what this means is 490 of the 500 companies in the S&P 500 are crap, and the best ones are all at the top. So this is why it's so intriguing to me, and it's honestly mind-boggling how people go their whole life and they invest in the S&P 500 when if they literally just took that money and they invested it into like the Mag 7, right? They would outperform the S&P 500 by a lot. It's that simple, right? It's not that simple all the time, but most of the time it's really that simple. So this is just a quick side note here. I'm a firm believer in college being a scam. Why the hell would you pay 200 grand for a piece of paper and then get a job out of college that's like you make 50, 70K a year, whatever? It just doesn't make any sense. Now, obviously, there are certain situations where college does make a lot of sense, like a lawyer or doctor, but most people don't go to college for that. So you can see here, young male grads are now jobless at the same rate as non-grads. So it's like, oh, you went to college, you went into all this debt, and now you're in the same position as someone who didn't go to college and has no debt, right? Not a good place to be in. Now, this is the bruh moment of the day. You guys ever heard of Dog with Hat? I made some videos about it last year, made a pretty good return on Dog with Hat last year. But the original hat, knitted hat, that this dog was wearing in this picture is up for auction today. And last time I checked, it was like over $1 million. I'm like, what the hell are you guys doing? First of all, how do you know if it's the original? And secondly, it's just a knitted hat. Like, come on, dude. Like, whoever's bidding on this Fin Bags, he must have a lot of money. I hope he has a lot of money because this is just ridiculous. But last thing I want to touch on real quick, pre-stock. Well, actually, second to last, pre-stocks. This is a huge development for Solana. So yesterday I touched on briefly how Solana is doing X stocks, which is basically the first 24-hour trading market for equities, which is insane, and it's going to be a huge market. But now, not only are they doing 24-hour equities, they're also doing pre-stocks, which is pre-IPO tokenized stocks, which is insane. Some big names here. You got XAI, you got Kraken, you also have OpenAI. By the way, ChatGPT 5 came out today. Epic Games, Discord. Like you got all these huge, like well-known companies that haven't IPO'd, and you can trade them now on Jupiter, which is pretty crazy. You guys definitely should look into that. I'll definitely do some more research on that. I'll get back to you on what I find. This is the last thing I want to talk about. This was kind of silly, but it's Elon Musk, right? Elon Musk loves memes, and he reposted this meme about Bitcoin being magic internet money. Now, this could be a greater message. It could just be a meme. But we did hear Elon talking about how USA is going into debt slavery. It's sending all its citizens into debt slavery by increasing the national debt, which is true. Elon is very open about not liking President Trump because of that and saying that the US dollar is going to fail. And we all know he holds Bitcoin on Tesla and SpaceX's balance sheet. So it's pretty interesting. I personally think Elon Musk is a closeted Bitcoiner, and he just doesn't want to say anything because if he does, it'll probably just like send Bitcoin to the moon. I don't think he wants to make it that easy. I don't know. Elon's a smart guy. He knows what Bitcoin is. I'm sure he understands fiat currency is going to zero. So I think he definitely supports Bitcoin, magic internet money. He just doesn't want to make it too obvious. So that's a little Easter egg for you. If Elon Musk does it, I mean, you guys have heard the saying, never bet against Elon because, well, just look at history, right? All of his companies are pretty damn successful. So that's all I got for you guys today. Once again, I appreciate you watching. I mean, this is my second slide form video, so please let me know what you think in the comments. Please let me know what I can do to improve, and I hope you guys have a great day.